Okay, so last week I put out part 1 of this series about Marek's disease. There is a lot of information in that video, and it's actually like the foundation of what we're going to be talking about today. So if you haven't seen it, I want you to go and check that out and then come back here and watch this video. If you've already watched that video, welcome to part 2. We're going to talk about prevention and treatment, so let's get started. Hello friends, welcome to Chickenlandia. My name is Dahlia. I'm a backyard chicken educator, also known as the president of Chickenlandia. Raising chickens has been the best way for me to find peace and joy in my life, and I want to help you find that too. So last week we talked about the nature of Marek's disease. We talked about the reality of what it means if it does hit your flock. I did get a lot of feedback. Most of the feedback I got was good. Some of it wasn't. That just happens. I just wanted to communicate that it's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be the end of your flock. It might not be that. You have options. So that's all I was trying to do. And I hope most of you out there understood that. Again, I know I probably sound like a broken record. Do I sound like a broken record? He said yes. But I am not a veterinarian, I'm not a scientist, I don't work for a government agency, I am a backyard chicken educator. I'm here to give you information. Please do your own research, come up with your own conclusions about what is best for your flock. And no matter what you decide, you're always welcome in Chickenlandia. I'm gonna put you down. All right, I am going to talk at length about the vaccine. I'm going to give you all the information that I have about it without any kind of agenda. I'm just here to give you information so that you can make the best choice for your flock. All of that being said, there is absolutely no substitute for taking really good care of your flock. That means making sure that they have the nutrition that they need. It means making sure that they have enough space, that they live a stress-free life, that they live the kind of life that chickens are supposed to live. That is the number one thing that you can do to prevent any kind of disease in your flock. And if you do get disease, you're going to have the best outcomes if you are being very mindful about the way that you care for your flock. There is no vaccine that can replace that. You absolutely must take good care of your chickens, and I know that all of you out there are. With that out of the way, we are going to talk in depth about the vaccine. I'm going to go into outer Chickenlandia because I don't want Walter bugging me all the way through this. There's just some really important information about the vaccine that I really think that you should know if you are wanting to go in that direction. Despite what you may have read or heard, the Marek's vaccine, it does not stop chickens from contracting Marek's. It just doesn't. That's mainstream information. I don't have any kind of agenda. I'm just telling you the facts. They can be vaccinated and still be carriers. They can still spread the disease, and possibly they could still succumb to the disease. Probably not, but it can happen. So let's take a look back online at the Merck Veterinary Manual. We were looking at this on part 1, and we can see in this paragraph, once the virus is introduced into a chicken flock, regardless of vaccination status, infection spreads quickly from bird to bird. Infected chickens continue to be carriers for long periods and act as sources of infectious virus. Shedding of infectious virus can be decreased, but not prevented by prior vaccination. So I'm telling you this because if you have a Marek's positive flock and you decide to bring in new chickens and you vaccinate those chickens for Marek's and you decide you want to rehome some of those chickens, you still need to disclose their medical history and the flock's medical history, because it is very likely that even though you had them vaccinated for Marek's, you're bringing them into a Marek's positive flock, they can still be carriers. That's just so important for you to know so you can make responsible decisions. But the very positive thing about the vaccine is that it will very likely keep chickens from developing serious symptoms and dying from those awful symptoms, having that awful death from Marek's disease. So a lot of flock owners make that decision because they just don't want to deal with that, and I don't blame them. You just have to make the right decision for your flock, and you need to understand that you're making that decision for your flock. I know for some of you that is a very hard decision because you may be very natural leaning. And I have a friend that is also, she's a lot like me, she's supernatural leaning, supernatural. She started having some losses of adolescent birds. And I've said this before, that Marek's usually hits between the ages of 8 weeks and 20 weeks. So she was having these losses, and it turns out that she had Marek's disease in her flock. So now if she brings in new chickens, she has those chickens vaccinated. And that was not an easy decision for her to make because she's a very natural leaning person, and some natural leaning people just don't want to go in that direction. It was what was best for her flock. And so I fully support her in her decision for her flock. Okay, so the Marek's vaccine needs to be administered before chickens are exposed to the disease. Now, last week we talked about how Marek's disease is everywhere. It's ubiquitous, meaning it is really present all over the place. With that in mind, if you decide that you want to go the vaccination route, it is very important to get your baby chicks vaccinated right when they hatch, because you want to get them vaccinated before they have exposure to the disease. Now, the easiest way to do that, and the way I would recommend people do that, especially if they're just getting started with backyard chickens, is to get their chicks vaccinated from the hatchery. A lot of times, even if you're purchasing chicks from the farm store, you can pre-order them and request that they be vaccinated for Marek's if they're not already automatically vaccinated for Marek's. If you are hatching eggs, you can purchase the vaccine and administer the vaccine yourself. Now, that is a little bit more complicated. The vaccine is sold in vials of 1,000 doses. It also requires special handling. You need to be careful how you store it. You need to obviously be careful how you're administering it. That's why I really say that it's just easier to order from a hatchery and have them handle it as soon as the baby chicks hatch. But like I said, it can be done. You can purchase it. You can vaccinate your baby chicks at home. It's just that you need to do a lot of research. You need to know what you're doing before those baby chicks hatch. And remember, they have to have the vaccine before exposure to the disease. Once Marek's is in your flock, it's too late. If one chicken has died of Marek's, you can't then vaccinate your flock because you're worried about them all getting it. It just doesn't work that way, okay? They've already all been exposed. So there's that. In part one of this series, I said that I had never had my chickens tested for Marek's, despite having wondered if my flock is Marek's positive, because like I said, I take in chickens from everywhere, so I wouldn't be shocked if my flock is a Marek's positive flock. I said when I mentioned that I had never had my chickens tested for it, to not judge me, okay? I say that a lot, but please don't judge me. And the reason I haven't had them tested for it yet, and I'm not saying I never will, but despite maybe thinking they might be Marek's positive, I haven't had them tested, is number one, I don't rehome chickens. Like, I have rehomed one rooster, and I totally disclosed everything to that person, and they were like, that's fine. And that was actually before I had some chickens have some symptoms, so at the time it wasn't even that big of a deal. So anyway, the reason that I haven't had my chickens tested is because the way that I take care of my chickens, whether or not they're Marek's positive or not, is really not going to change a lot. Like, all the things that I'm doing now are things that I'm doing to support my chickens to have the best and most disease-free life that they can possibly have. I'm already doing everything to give my chickens a good, long, healthy life. That's the most important thing that you can do for disease prevention. It's more important than vaccination. It's more important than anything. You give your chickens the things that they need to have a good life and to have a healthy life. So I'm giving my chickens enough space. I'm giving them fresh air. I'm giving them the ground to peck and scratch on. I am giving them the best feed that I can afford for my budget. And that's the best feed that you can give them, is whatever you can afford for your budget. I'm giving them nutrient-rich scraps, nutrient-rich treats when I give them to them. I'm also giving my chickens immune-boosting herbs, antiviral herbs like oregano and thyme. And I talk about oregano and thyme all the time. No pun intended. I also give my chickens garlic. I give them apple cider vinegar in their water a few times a week. I have supplements that I give my chickens, but you don't even have to purchase anything. You probably already have apple cider vinegar. You probably already have oregano and thyme in your cupboard. And those are things that you can support your chickens with. You just sprinkle it on their feed, you put a little bit in their water, and it's not necessarily like it's going to be this miracle cure, but what it does is it gives them a good foundation. It helps to build their overall immunity and their overall resilience so that they can fight off things and live as long a life as possible. One thing I do that's really important is I spend a lot of time with my chickens. And I really think that's something that is not only good for them, but it's good for me. It's good for me to be outside spending time with my chickens. And when I'm doing that, I'm observing them for changes. So if I see that a chicken is not feeling well, I can act very quickly. I can bring that chicken inside, do what I need to do to help them through whatever they have going on. That's very important. Another thing that's super important is to make sure that your chickens have a place to dust bathe through the whole year, even when it's yucky outside, like it's snowing or it's raining or whatever. They should have a place to dust bathe that is out of the elements so that they can remain parasite free as much as possible, because parasites can stress out a chicken. It's kind of like you get into this cycle where there's maybe a little bit of parasites that's causing chicken stress. The stress is making your chicken sick. The sickness is leading to parasite infestation. Like, it's this cycle that's hard to get out of. So it's best for you to be proactive about that and just make sure that they have a place to dust bathe so you can keep that parasite load down. If you have a chicken that is displaying symptom of Marek's, maybe you've had that chicken diagnosed by a vet, maybe you're just thinking, I think this might be Marek's. What I want you to do at that point is not to panic. I want you to take that chicken, bring them inside, and start the rest method on that chicken. Once you rule other things out, make sure they don't have something else going on, you start the rest method. And I will leave a link to that video in the description so that you can see what I mean when I say the rest method. It's an acronym, and it's just a series of steps, very easy steps that you take when you have a sick chicken. Beyond the rest method, I would probably get that chicken on some natural antiviral treatment. You could do colloidal silver, you could do oregano oil at a very, very diluted dose. I'm talking like 1 drop per gallon of water, very, very well mixed. And another thing that I would do, because I use homeopathics, I have been practicing homeopathy for 30 years. It's not for everybody. I know some people don't believe that it works. I've been using it for a long time. I've seen it work. So I would probably use whatever homeopathic remedy I felt was appropriate for the symptoms that I'm seeing from that particular chicken. So the thing about homeopathy is that it really follows the individual. It doesn't follow the symptoms. Now, there are some situations where a disease can take on the same characteristics, and so you can kind of make a guess on what might work for that disease, but it's always best. Like, your best case scenario would be to talk to a homeopath and get the exact right remedy for your chicken that's going through whatever they're going through. Now, I will tell you, for Marek's disease, because of the symptoms that you usually see, 2 homeopathics that I've seen used the most are Rus Tox and Hypericum. And the reason I'm suggesting those is because they address pain, they address kind of nerve symptoms. A lot of the most common symptoms that you will see that have to do with the nervous system, these 2 homeopathics are really good for those. So that might be something you might want to have on hand, but of course, best case scenario, talk to a homeopath and do your own research. Now, you might have noticed that I haven't said take your chicken to the vet. I'm assuming that you've either gotten a diagnosis from the vet and gotten whatever they suggested for you to either support that chicken, or maybe they've said there's nothing we can do because there isn't really a mainstream treatment for this disease because it's just thought to be fatal. The other thing I'm assuming is that if you haven't taken them to the vet, you probably can't. All right, and that's okay. That happens. A lot of people can't take their chickens to the vet, and we just do the best we can. And we know that we have given our chickens the best life that we could possibly give them. If your flock has been diagnosed with Marek's disease, you're probably really overwhelmed right now, and I don't blame you. You may have already lost several birds, and that's a really hard thing to go through. But you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your flock that is still pecking and scratching to understand that you will get through this, okay? There is a light at the end of the tunnel. This isn't forever, and don't let anyone scare you into thinking otherwise, okay? You can do this. So, if you want to learn more about how I take care of my chickens so that they have a stress-free environment from the wee hours of the morning to dusk at night when I lock them up, I do have a video where I show you step by step, everything that I do for my chickens to give them the best life that I can. It is on the screen right now. Thank you so much to all of you that have been here with me through this series. I hope you got a lot from it. Remember, every video I put out is 100% friendly, backyard chickens, education, and entertainment, and I know you're gonna love it.